Well, hello and welcome. Today we're going to make dinner yeast rolls. So this is going to be my own recipe. It's kind of altered from another and my very basic bread recipe, which I will link down in the description of the video. And if you want my basic bread recipe, I will link to that video as well down in the description. So to start, you need granulated sugar, which I keep in this nifty thing. Some honey, some kosher salt. It's coarse salt. If you're using regular salt, use half as much. So if I say a teaspoon of this, you want half a teaspoon of not kosher salt. Yeah, it matters. Yeast, I like active dry or rapid rise, either works. We're going to use some milk. I did not get my egg out yet. My bad. But here's how we're going to do this. So I have my bowl. Have my milk. Milk you want to heat in the microwave. You don't want it to be above 120 degrees because that will kill your yeast. But it's really quite simple. We're going to go with 1 1/3 cups of milk. And then I'm going to go nuke it. My microwave is over there. I'll be right back. Put the milk away and grab the egg. Set it in my measuring cup so it doesn't wobble. Okay, I microwave the milk for about 45 seconds. I don't want it to be warm, really. I just want it to be kind of room temperature-ish. So your yeast is going to rise unless you put it outside in the snow, but you don't want to make it too cold. So you freeze yeast, it dies. You get yeast too hot, it dies. Ideally, you want to keep it right around 100 degrees. So this doesn't feel super warm to my hands. It actually feels kind of cool. So I'm going to put that in my bowl. 1 1/3 cups. Now, I'm going to add the yeast to the milk. Funny thing about yeast, 1 tablespoon. It is a living thing. So, like I said, if you get it too hot, it's going to die. If you get it too cold, it's going to die. It can't really survive if you don't take care of it. So, 2 tablespoons. Just put that in there. Put the lid back on it. Go right there. Now, don't add your salt right now because if your salt touches your yeast will die. Think of it like a slug. You don't want to put salt on slugs. That kills them too. We're going to mix this around. Then we're going to add our sugar. Now, yeast loves sugar. It feeds on it, makes it happy. You get happy yeast, you get foam, you get fun times and rising. So to this, I'm going to add 4 tablespoons of sugar because we're going for a sweet dinner roll. And I also don't like to dirty up more dishes than I need to, so we're going to mix that around. One thing that I really like to add to my bread is honey because it gives it this incredibly unique flavor. And no, I don't measure it, so it's approximately 2 tablespoons. About 1/8 of a cup, whatever. Anyway, just mix that together. Now you can wait until your yeast gets foamy, but if you know that your yeast is alive, you don't really need to wait for that. That's what all those recipes are making you do, is making sure that your yeast is still alive. So ours is definitely alive. I usually do not crack eggs directly into the bowl, but we're making an exception today. I'm just going to kind of scramble that in just a little bit. Okay, now this is an enriched dough, meaning that it has eggs and milk in it. Usually butter too, but I'm not really a super big fan of the fat, so we're going to leave the butter out. Gotta get my bread flour, I'll be right back. Okay, this is plain bleached bread flour. Unbleached, bleached, doesn't really matter. It does change the taste slightly, but who's counting? We're going to use about 4 or 5 cups of flour. I keep my flour in this because it's easier to spoon it into my measuring cup and level it off. So here we go. I'm going to measure out 2 cups and mix them in with my spatula before I put the dough on the bowl on the machine. You just give it a little tippy tap with your knife. And don't dip down into your flour because that compresses it in your measuring cup. As you can see, this is a flat, dry measuring cup with no lip on the side, so it's not for liquids. 1. Using milk instead of water is going to make your dough a little softer. Adding an egg is going to put a little moisture in there. So, my egg was cold. You can start with room temperature eggs. That will make your dough rise a little faster. Kind of scraping the bottom of the barrel here on my flour. I may have to go refill, but that's okay. I can do that. 2 cups. And then I'm just going to give it a mix around with my spatula just a little. We're going to let this sit while I go refill my flour bowl. It'll probably take me about 5 minutes, but when I come back, we can add the salt. Kind of looks like a big floppy mess, if you can see. It's really runny. The flour's still kind of chunky in there. Now I'm going to just fit this on my mixer and go refill my flour. Okay, my flour is refilled, and it looks like most of this is still kind of chunky, but that's okay. So we're going to go ahead and add our 3rd cup, along with our salt. The reason that you add salt to bread is because it helps the gluten structure hold on. So it makes your gluten a little bit stronger than if you didn't use salt. Plus, salt makes things sweeter. I know that doesn't make any sense, but it actually blocks the bitter receptors on your tongue. So when you add salt to something that is supposed to be sweet and has a lot of sugar in it, or has something like lemons or limes, you're not going to get that bitter, weird flavor. That's why it makes grapefruit taste a little sweeter, and why it's so good on watermelon. Alright, I have a bit of a gelatinous mess here, so I'm going to go ahead and add my salt. My salt, I'm going to use half a tablespoon of salt. Coarse salt. So if you're using regular table salt, iodized salt, you want to use, let's see, that was about 1.5 teaspoons. So you want to use about 3/4 of a teaspoon of regular salt. 3 teaspoons equal 1 tablespoon. Just going to kind of smash that down into my flour mixture. Again, not using any other fat except for the fat in the milk. I did use whole milk, not 2% or skim. Yes, that matters. Just scrape my spatula off on my dough hook. Alright, bread making with a mixer rule number 1. Once you lower this and turn this on, don't walk away from it. You'll thank me later. I think we're up to about 3 cups of flour, so lock that in place. If you're not using a KitchenAid, you're going to want to turn your mixer up just a little bit higher. These are incredibly powerful. My flour was mostly incorporated, so I'm going to run this on medium for just a minute. Put some of this stuff away so we can see. Also, it helps me remember what I've used and what I haven't. Okay, my dough is nicely moistened, so I'm going to lift the hook. You can see it right here. It's a kind of gelatinous still. And we are going to measure out another cup of flour. Set that in my measuring bowl. I'm done with that spoon. We're up to 3 cups of flour so far. We're going to use between 4 and 5. There goes the 4th. Now I have a large bowl over here that's ready for my dough. I got it out before, and I'll grease it here in a minute while this is running. I'm not leaving it, but I will walk over here while it's running. Okay, just added my flour, so I'm leaving my mixer on low until the flour kind of gets incorporated into the dough. Dough will tell you when it's had enough flour. It gets moody. You'll see. Run that just until it's incorporated on low. You don't want to burn the motor up in your mixer, so it needs a little extra power to actually move your dough around. Move it to medium. I think I'm on about a 3 to 4. And just kind of let it do its thing. Get my full scraper. This is the best investment I've ever made. It actually helps me to pull all the dough out of the mixer. You can either knead this by hand, or you can let the mixer do the work for you. Either way, you need to let it knead. Mixer 7 minutes, by hand for 10, okay? Bread is an exercise in patience. You can't really see down in the bowl right now, but it's clearing the sides, but not the bottom. If I let it sit in here and kind of run, it should come together a bit more and start to clear the bottom of the bowl. But this is about the texture that I want it. So if you see, it's still a little sticky. Right now I'm just going to kind of pull it off the hook. My counter is super duper clean. I cleaned it today. If your counter is not clean and you go to knead bread on it, it will pick up things that you didn't realize are there from 1982. So make sure that your counter is super duper clean before you knead bread. Alright, bowl scraper. Just kind of scraping the dough down to get happy with my dough ball here. Alright. I'm going to take some flour and sprinkle it on my counter. On top of this, we will put our dough ball. Now the idea of bread is to bring your dough to a tacky but not sticky stage. So what that means, I will show you in a few minutes. Done with that. And I'm just going to turn this over because I don't want to add too much flour. Now, there are many ways to knead bread, knead dough. My favorite is folding, stacking your hands, and pushing. And you just do that right on top of that flour. Yeah, your hands are going to get dirty, so make sure those were clean too, because it will also pull all the dirt off your hands and out from under your fingernails. Clean, clean, clean. I have set my oven to proof, but if you do not have a proofing option on your oven, just turn the light on. It keeps it about the right temperature in there. I added a little flour because it was feeling a little sticky. I'm going to do this for about 10 minutes, so bear with me. The reason you need bread is to develop the gluten. Gluten is very important in bread. If you're gluten-free, I'm sorry. There is a friend of mine, hopefully I'll have one of her recipes on here soon, who does gluten-free bread. and she has actually come up with a couple of really tasty sounding recipes because she wants a certain texture and certain flavor in her mouth, which I can understand because bread is supposed to feel a certain way, right? Okay, this is actually feeling pretty good right now. It's tacky, but it's not super sticky. And what that means is I won't be pushing it into any more of this flour on my counter. Now, bread is not picky. If you want to make it with water, yeast, milk and yeast, eggs and yeast, you can add fruit to it. I will be doing a fruit loaf. Super yummy. And I will put the link to that video down in the comments once it's published. You can add fruit, you can add flavorings, you can add pepper, you can add extra salt. Just make sure the salt's kneaded in the next knead. So after I'm done doing this, I'm going to put it in that bowl over there that I will first grease with Crisco. And then I will cover it with a damp tea towel and put it aside to rise. And again, your bread is going to rise unless you throw it in the freezer or put it outside in the snow. It's not picky. There's two reasons to knead. Kneading gives you those important gluten strands, and it also warms the yeast a bit with your hands. So now, tacky but not sticky means I hold it and it kind of sticks to my hand before it drops, but it doesn't come off on my hands, if that makes sense. Now, some people knead this way, but I prefer the tried and true rolled and fold method. We'll give you carpal tunnel if you do it too much, so be careful or let your machine do it. You can feel, once you've done this long enough, you can kind of feel the moment the bread relaxes, which is what you're looking for. It changes texture. It's really hard to describe, but if you do this for 10 minutes, you're going to be like, oh, I felt that. Do it for 15, your gluten will collapse and your bread will not rise for you. It will be completely inedible. Is dense, ugly, heavy bread, unless I'm looking for dense bread. In that case, I would definitely add more flour. Don't know what that was, but it was black and it looked pretty gross. So, a dense bread is used for things like pretzels and bagels. And like a loaf, if you like that dense, close crumb. You can also see the bread has stopped splitting quite so badly as I'm kneading it. It's become softer, more pliable. Oh, so nice and soft. Now if you have a wood counter in your kitchen, it's really better to knead bread on wood just because it's warm. Granite is kind of, you know what I mean. I'm sure you do. It's pretty. Can't really see it with the light, but yeah, it's so pretty. And you can probably tell that most of the sticky and tacky has gone away because the flour has all absorbed the liquid and it's kind of come together in beautiful harmony of bread. And there's my timer. All right, there is our bread ball. Now, Crisco, paper towel, scoop some up. You can use a glass bowl, whatever. You can also oil this with olive oil, or the oil you're choosing. I prefer Crisco because it makes for a really nice dough. I also have a yeast roll recipe that uses Crisco in it, which I find really weird now that I've been making bread for a while. Oh, now you're going to pick your loaf up, pop it in there, smoosh it around so the top gets covered. You don't want it to dry out. Kind of smash it into the bowl so it's flat disc, like so. I don't know if you can see that. Then take your damp towel, open it up, and lay it over your bowl. And I'm going to go put it in the oven. It'll probably take it an hour to an hour and a half. See you guys then. Hi everybody, we're back. Okay. Lovely dough risen. It's nice and poofy. So what I'm going to do is gently deflate it. See, it didn't stick. Turn it out on my counter. And just cover it with the bowl for a minute. Alright, what we need for this part, I'm using a 9 by 13 inch baking dish, Pyrex, a big knife. Make sure it's sharp because you're going to cut your dough. You can also use scissors, but you're going to cut your dough. More Crisco. It's going to be used to grease the pan and the plastic wrap so the rolls don't stick to anything. We're going to grease the pan liberally. Grease it up the sides. We don't want our buns sticking to anything but each other. Now I have my food scale here, and what I'm going to do is weigh the dough, use my trusty rusty telephone, and divide that by 24 by weight. Cut it, shape it, put it in the pan, let it rise, and then bake it. So here we go. I'm take my bowl off, turn this on. We are going to go with grams because that's the most accurate way to weigh. And we have 1,015 grams. So 1,015 divided by 24, about 42 grams. Just gonna take our dough, spread it out. You don't have to flour your counter because this really shouldn't be sticky at all. So 24 is an even number. Here we go. I'm gonna attempt this. Wish me luck. Just gonna leave that covered so it doesn't dry out. Can't figure out what I'm doing, I'm just cutting each one of these in pieces. That's 64, 34, 44, 38, 41, close enough, 24. 36, 41, close enough, 36, that was 46 actually. Now you don't have to hang with me, I'm just going to divide these out into approximately 42 grams of dough each. Toss this back in there with that while I shape these bad boys. So we're going to leave that sitting over there for a minute. Take your dough, roll it together, kind of fun here. So pinch it, kind of roll it under. What you're doing is kind of tightening the top of it so you get a nice tight top on your roll. Pinch the bottom together. Don't know if you can see that, like so. Then put it down on the counter. Remember, you have no flour. And just kind of roll it around in your hand. There's another way to do this, and you can pull it back toward yourself, and it's just kind of tucking that in. Pinch it. What you're doing is tightening the top. Should look a bit like that on the bottom, and like a nice smooth ball on the top. So tucking and rolling, rolling and tucking, and then tighten it up on the counter. Alright, I have about half of them done because we don't want the tops of this bread to dry out because then it will stop rising. It'll be all funky. Let me get this last one in the pan. By the way, I'm putting these in with their sides slightly touching. It's like 4 to a row. You're going to make 24, so they're basically going to rise up and not out. Little trick. Ugh. Take some cooking spray and just give the top one a little spritz. That keeps them moist. Now I'm going to take the towel off of this one and put it over these just so they kind of maintain that dampness. And I'm going to measure out my next ones. So I'll see you again after I'm done. Okay, I'm rolling the last one. Now, I've worked pretty fast because you can't really let it sit and let it dry out. Again, dryness is the enemy of rising. That's why we grease the top of the dough when we put it in the pan. So what I'm going to do now is pull my cloth back so I don't re-spray the one that I already sprayed. Give them a little shot of that. Look, these are already starting to rise. You can see in the pan. Whoops, that one slipped. No slippage, guys. We're going to wait for those to about double in size, but I'm going to cover them with a little more grease, cling film, plastic wrap, whatever. To grease, plastic wrap, spread it out. Take your Crisco and just rub it over top. You can, of course, spray it with the same spray that you just sprayed on the rolls. I feel like that makes a huge mess. This is very tidy. You just rip it free from the box. Bring your pan over and flip the wrap just like that. Cover it kind of tightly, but so it can expand if the rolls touch it, and back in the oven. Proof. Okay, so we're going to let those rise about 30 minutes because they should double pretty quickly. You saw the ones that I had on there. Actually, I may pull them out of the oven here in 15 minutes or so. Hey Siri, set a timer for 15 minutes.
Okay, 15 minutes and counting.
Okay, I'm going to pull them out of the oven in 15 minutes and then preheat my oven so it's nice and hot. I don't want to overproof them. Now if you're American you say proof, and if you're British you say prove, and it's the same thing, just two different countries. So proof, prove, same difference. You know, we Americans bastardized the language, so ha! Putting my things away. I will be back when it's time to bake. Okay, we have been letting our dough rise for half an hour. I have a cup of whole milk and a pastry brush. My oven is preheated to 375 degrees. And now I'm going to brush these with some milk. It just keeps them soft and pretty. And then when they come out of the oven, I will brush them with some butter. Doesn't that sound delicious? And the reason you don't want to raise these for an hour is because that will overproof them and they will have big, big, big holes in them. And that's not what we're going for. The crumb in these should be just a little bit dense. But they should also be some light, sweet, wonderful tasting dinner rolls. Okay, all brushed with milk. You really don't need a whole cup, just about a tablespoon. But look how pretty those are. Aren't they nice? They're almost peeping over the edge of the little dish here. So I'm going to toss some ice in my oven with these so I get that beautiful oven spring and super crispy top. All right, they're in. We're going to bake those for 12 to 15 minutes or until the internal temperature reaches between 195 and 200. That way you make sure you kill any salmonella that may be living in your flour. Don't eat raw flour. See you in a few. Welcome back. Look at those. I'm going to throw them at you. Look at those. Aren't they beautiful? There is a hole in the middle where I was sticking my thermometer to check the temperature. I got it to 200 degrees. Hot plate. You're supposed to let them cool before you take them out and try them. Right now I have some melted butter. It's about a tablespoon in a cup. And again, I'm going to just hit these with the butter. Yes, I know, I'm making a mess. But we're going to dig out the one in the middle there where I poked my timer because I'm sure my family won't miss that one. And I am going to serve these with the lemon thyme chicken tonight. Sounds delicious, right? Dinner rolls. So yummy. So glossy. Beautiful. Show them to you one more time. Oh, so gorgeous. And that one right there is the one I'm about to pull out of there. So here we go. Let's see. I'm going to use these really old tongs. Just go right down. And right down. And these should pull apart pretty easily. And I got the top of it. Woo! But that's so good. You can see the part, I'm coming over there, you can see the part where I just smash it. looks divine. Coming over. Do you see that? Is the focus off? Look how pretty that is. So soft. That nice dense crumb. You don't want it too light. A perfect vessel for some butter. So good. Okay. I will see you guys next time. Like bread week maybe. So bread week we'll be doing a full loaf and then some fruit loaves, and I think I have biscotti on the menu, and it's a cranberry cashew biscotti. So good. You're gonna lose your mind over those things. So stay tuned. If you haven't subscribed, do so. We will make and bake together.